Hey guys, this is Mr. H. Hey, I'm back with another video. Um, when I'm teaching inverse functions, for a lot of students, it's pretty confusing. So I teach it using PEMDAS and then inverse operations, reverse the order. And I created a video or two on that. So I'm going to put a link up here in the right-hand corner. But one of the things that I've started doing is I play a game called Inverse Operations, and also finding the first operation in order to determine what you need to do. So what I usually do is I'll show you how I play it. One of the things I do is I will have a question from a book and I'll flip through it and whatever I land on. And this type of question, what I want to know is, um, according to PEMDAS, what's the first operation that we are doing on the X? And the first thing that we're doing is it has parentheses. So we're going to do what's inside the parentheses first. And the first operation that we're going to be doing is squaring the X. So you would say squaring X, right? And then the second operation would be subtracting 4, right? We do those two things inside the parentheses first, and then we would go to the logarithm with a base 3. So that's the next thing that we're doing. And then the final thing that we're doing is multiplying by 5. Once I have those operations, according to PEMDAS, I'm just going to take the inverse and then reverse the order. So the opposite of squaring is taking the square root. The opposite of subtracting 4 is adding 4. Opposite of taking the log with a base of 3 is having an exponential function with the base of 3. And then the last thing, the opposite of multiplying by 5, is dividing by 5. Now I reverse the order, and then I just perform those operations on X. Let me change the color. So the first thing that I'm going to do is divide by 5 according to this. Second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to raise this all and have a base, make that part exponent and have a base of 3. And then the next thing I'm going to do is add 4 to this. And then the final thing that I'm going to do is take the square root. Let me clean this up just a little bit. So I'm kind of in the weeds. I'm actually going through the whole process. I just wanted to give you kind of a glimpse of how this works, but that's how you're doing. Now, the other kind of challenge that I would do is I would have, what's the inverse operation? All right, so if I'm subtracting 7 from X, my students would say, oh, you add 7, right? So that's the inverse. So you would say add 7. So now let's play. So I'm going to flip through the book. When I land on something, you tell me what you need to do. What you guys should be doing is stopping the video and trying it on your own before I give the answer. So let me flip through. All right, first one. What's the opposite of having an exponential function with a base of 10? You should say, oh, taking the log with a base of 10 of X, right? That's the inverse. All right, let's try another one. Okay, what's the opposite of taking the 5th root of X? Okay, you should say, oh, raise X to the 5th power. That's the inverse. All right, let's try another one. Okay, here's one. What's the first operation according to PEMDAS that's being performed on the X? Stop the video. And if you can, try to go through all 4. Okay, according to PEMDAS, we have parentheses. So the first thing we should do is what's inside the parentheses. And first thing we're going to do is we're going to raise it to the 5th power. So I'm just going to say raise it to the 5th power. That's my symbol to say we're raising X to the 5th power. Second thing that we're doing is subtracting 2. So I'm saying subtract 2. The third thing that we're doing is multiplying by 3. So I'd say multiply by 3. And the fourth thing that we're doing is adding 7. Now that I have those operations, I'm going to do the inverse. The inverse of raising something to the 5th power is taking the 5th root. The inverse of subtracting 2 is adding 2. The inverse of multiplying by 3 is dividing by 3. The inverse of adding 7 is subtracting 7. I'm just going to reverse the order. And now I'm going to find the inverse function. I'm going to change the color here. First thing that we're going to do is we are subtracting 7 from X. Perfect. Next thing, we are going to divide by 3. So I divide this whole thing by 3. Got it. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2. Got it. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 5th root of that entire sum. So I'm going to go bam. And that's the inverse function. All right, let's keep it moving. Do a couple more. What's the inverse of taking the cube root of x? It's raising it to the 3rd power, or cubing it. Okay, flip this way. What's the first operation that we're performing? Stop the video, give it a shot. Okay, the first operation is we're squaring x, and then we're adding 5, and then we're raising all of this to the 3rd power, or with 3 as the base, not the 3rd power, where it's 3 as the base, and then we're subtracting 6. And then we would do the inverse operation. So the opposite of squaring is the square root. The opposite of adding 5 is subtracting 5. The inverse of 3 to the exponential function with a base of 3 is a logarithm with a base of 3. And then the opposite or inverse of subtracting 6 is adding 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. You do those in that order and you will have your inverse function. Okay, let's do one more. What's the opposite of raising x to the 1/3 power? Stop the video. Oops, let's get a different color. The inverse is cubing it. So this is the same thing as this. So that's why the inverse would be to cube it. These two are equivalent. All right, that's it, guys. So usually what I do when I'm playing this game is I give my students a whiteboard, I flip through, they answer it, then they hold the whiteboard up. If they get it right, I throw them some candy. So that's what kind of makes it fun. They seem to enjoy it. I get to understand, figure out what they know and what they don't know. And then we just kind of go from there. All right, I hope you guys have found this interesting. And if you have any questions, just leave a comment. All right, thanks.